Was the battle between Sparta and Athens true, or is it part of their mythology? Good question. So it is a true. It is not. It's not a battle. It was a war, and it is a true war. It's a true event. It's something that happened in the 5th century BCE. So when we discuss history, it's always useful to take a look at the map. So let me show you. Uh, Share the map with you. This is where we are. So let me take you to where these events happened. We are here in India. Let's go westwards. So this here is the nation, the modern nation of Greece. So this war took place in the 5th century BCE between Athens, which you see right here in the middle of the screen, and the city of Sparta, which is here. So these were two coalitions between. So at the time, Greece was divided into nation states, and all of these nation states were at some time or the other, usually invariably at war with each other. They were always battling for supremacy. So Sparta was the traditional hegemonic power in Greece. It is in this peninsula, which is called the Peloponnese Peninsula, and this war was called the Peloponnesian War. So what happened was that Sparta was the traditional power in Greece. It was the hegemonic power. And in the first half of the 5th century BCE, Athens began to emerge as a powerful city state. At the time, there was a conflict between Greece and Persia. So much of what is east of Greece, present day Anatolia, etc., was all occupied by the Persian Achaemenid Empire, the Hakshamanish dynasty. And Persia was, for a great deal of time, at war with the Greeks. So the Athenians, they managed to repulse Persian invasions, and they defeated the Persians in several battles, and they became very powerful, and they had a greater population. So they created a confederation of city-states, an alliance of city-states, and this basically stood against the alliance of the Spartans. So the Spartans had a number of allies on the Peloponnesian Peninsula. Now, Athens had a greater population than Sparta. It was more powerful. It had it was able to build a much greater army, many more infantry soldiers than the Spartans. They grew a big navy, more than 300 naval ships, while Sparta did not have a single ship at all. And the Athenians became so powerful that they basically started extracting tribute from their so-called alliance members, the other city-states. So they became a hegemonic dominant power, and they posed a great threat to the Spartan alliance. So the historian Thucydides, who was from Athens, he observed that the emergence of Athens uh, as a new power threatened to displace the existing hegemony of Sparta. And he said that when such a thing happens, war is inevitable. And this is called the Thucydides trap. It is something that is relevant even today in geopolitics. Whenever war is essentially inevitable, according to this principle, when an emerging power threatens to displace an existing great power, either on a regional level or at the international level, as the existing hegemon. So this is currently used to analyze the US-China rivalry. So that's about Thucydides. So the Athenians and the Spartans basically went to war. The war happened in the second half of the 5th century BCE. It was a great drawn-out affair. It went on for almost 3 decades, and there were many ups and downs, many phases of the war. There were many détentes. There were many ceasefires as well. There were periods of relative stability, and then they went back to war. Initially, Athens was very powerful. They had a much greater army. They had these hoplite soldiers. Hoplites were infantrymen who were very well armored, and they would have these spears. They had hoplites. They had archers. They developed the archery tactics. They hired swords. They hired horsemen from Scythia. So they built up a great cavalry army as well, and then they used all that on their ships. So they had brilliant naval tactics. They used to put archers and hoplites and even cavalrymen on ships, and they used this to raid the Peloponnese Peninsula. And initially, the Athenians had a great deal of success, but eventually the Spartans were able to prevail when they started adopting the same tactics that the Athenians had. So at the end of the day, at the end of the war, the Spartans triumphed, because and they also had some help from the Persians, from the Achaemenid Empire. So at the end of the day, at the end of the war, they were able to invade and occupy Athens, and that was the end of the war. So that brought an end to the era of Athenian dominance in Greece. It brought the Athenian Empire essentially crashing down for some time. In the next century, there was a brief resurgence of Athens. There was another war, and so on. The history of cycles go on. So that is in brief about the Peloponnesian conflict between the Greeks and the Spartans. It is very much a real conflict, and it is something that historians even today draw lessons from, especially the Thucydides trap, which says that when a new power emerges and threatens the hegemony of the existing power, whoever it is, then war is almost inevitable. And that's why people believe that today war is more or less inevitable in some form or the other between the Americans and the Chinese.